For more than a decade, Cassie Ventura was trapped in a drug-fueled toxic relationship, one filled with abuse, manipulation, and constant fear. Every moment she spent with Diddy was clouded by anxiety and paranoia. She never knew what to expect from her unpredictable, aggressive boyfriend. One minute he is smiling, the next he is angry. Lavish vacations and designer gifts were all just part of a tradition that followed after each abuse. Her music career, which once showed promise, was constantly held hostage whenever she didn't comply with Diddy's demands. And every time she tried to break free, his powerful network would find a way to reel her back in, leaving her feeling cornered and helpless. What began as a business deal quickly turned into a relationship, then spiraled into a decade-long obsession. Cassie's life and career crumbled, and she was reduced to performing coerced sexual acts for her controlling partner alongside hired male escorts. But in 2023, she decided to fight back. Her explosive lawsuit against Diddy not only exposed years of trauma, but also helped ignite the legal firestorm he's now facing. Diddy claims he first heard of Cassie in 2005 while at a club when her breakout hit Me and You came on. The song was huge at the time, and naturally he got curious about the voice behind it, only to learn it belonged to Cassie. But according to other sources, the story is a little different. Back then, Cassie was dating Ryan Leslie, one of Diddy's own producers at Bad Boy Entertainment, so crossing paths with her was almost inevitable.
He started pressing up on her. Her first visit to the house, we was all in Miami. She came with Ryan Leslie. So when she came with Ryan Leslie, this was all business. And it was when she was there for 2 weeks with Ryan Leslie that Diddy started looking at her like, oh, wow. So I knew right from there that it was going to be a problem because he told Slam, Slam was his producer, who brought Cassie into play. Yo, you got to meet this girl. She's such and such and such. She's Ryan, da-da-da. So when he came, he said, okay, next time, have Cassie come by herself. So when I seen Cassie 2 weeks later by herself, I said, oh, God, why did he allow this to happen? Like, I would never allow my girl to come out the Diddy house by herself.
Regardless of how they met, one thing was clear. Diddy was eager to sign her. At the time, Cassie was just 19, and Diddy was 36. From the outside, it looked like a strategic business move, a music executive bringing in fresh talent with hopes of making millions later. Within just a few months, he signed her to a 10-album deal with Bad Boy in February 2006, which was actually a terrible decision by Cassie. By August that same year, she dropped her debut album, which debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200, while also managing to sell 321,000 copies in the US. During the promo run, Diddy was always close by, attending events and interviews, making sure his new artist wasn't overwhelmed by the whirlwind of celebrity life. But as Diddy got closer, Ryan Leslie began to fade out of the picture. His influence over Cassie's career and life slowly diminished. It didn't take long before Diddy started showing interest in Cassie beyond business, despite knowing she was still with Ryan. On her 21st birthday in Las Vegas, Diddy invited himself to the celebration and showed up with a crew of high-profile musicians and producers. But it didn't stop there. Later that night, at a hotel after-party, he followed her into the bathroom and forcibly kissed her. Cassie was shocked, ran out crying, and told her best friend at the time what had happened, but she was too scared to tell anyone else. The next day, at the Video Music Awards, Diddy got visibly upset when Cassie showed up at his table with Ryan Leslie. He reminded her that the invitation was for her alone, not her boyfriend. A few weeks later, Diddy made another move as he insisted on taking her out. But when he picked her up from her Manhattan apartment in a blue luxury vehicle, Cassie was stunned by Diddy's appearance, who was already intoxicated, but she eventually got into the car. As soon as she got in the car, he handed her a pill. When she asked what it was, he told her, "Never mind, you'll like it." She later realized it was ecstasy, and that was her first time taking the pill. On their way, Diddy drove recklessly through the city, putting both their lives at risk, but they eventually arrived at a venue in downtown Manhattan. Diddy's intoxication, coupled with his aggressive behavior, got them denied at the door after clashing with security. Cassie went back home alone, but Diddy was left furious. For the remainder of the night, he sent her multiple messages complaining how she had left him high and alone. After 2 failed attempts, Diddy knew he had to get more creative. He paid a promoter to design a fake flyer for a party in Miami, supposedly hosted by Cassie, in attempts to get her alone, away from her boyfriend. She had no idea it was a setup. When she arrived, she found out the truth. It was just her and Diddy. That weekend, he fed her heavy amounts of drugs, got her intoxicated, before eventually making out with her, and hence luring her into starting a relationship with him. From then on, whenever he felt like they needed some time together, Diddy would take her on extravagant vacations. But the closer Cassie got to Diddy, the more she began to see his true nature. Behind the charm and wealth was a man who was aggressive, violent, and controlling, and the physical abuse began early in their relationship. On one instance, Cassie recalls a moment after partying with Jay-Z when Diddy got violent towards her and started beating her as they left the venue in an Escalade. Diddy ended up chasing Cassie out of the car on 5th Avenue in New York City, but thankfully she was able to get a cab and went back to her apartment in Manhattan. On reaching her apartment, she started crying as she realized that there was no one she could talk to about the incidents that happened due to the power Diddy had over her. As his grip on her life tightened, Diddy made sure Cassie stayed within reach at all times. Between 2008 and 2010, he rented her 2 separate apartments, one in New York and the other in Los Angeles, but both just 5 minutes away from his own homes in each city. He had full control over every part of her life, from what she wore and where she lived to the events she attended and the career moves she could or couldn't make, basically everything. After gaining total control over Cassie, he knew it was time to launch his final move, and at just 22 years old, Cassie was introduced to the so-called freakoffs. While in New York, Diddy told Cassie that he would want her to engage in some sort of fantasy called voyeurism, and that it would turn on Diddy if he saw her with another man, to which she accepted. Cassie claims that the first time it happened, Diddy hired a male escort and brought him into his LA home. Diddy, Cassie, and the escort all wore masquerade masks as they engaged in this so-called fantasy. All 3 of them took multiple drugs before Cassie and the escort started making out, as Diddy was directing the whole thing before touching himself. Cassie accepted to engage in the fantasy because he didn't want to anger Diddy, and she was aware of the violent abuse that would follow whenever she failed to comply with his demands. She was disgusted by what she had done, and she recalls feeling dirty and confused after the session. But what she thought was a one-time ordeal quickly became a recurring nightmare, and that's when he told her that from that point onwards, they will be referring to those sessions as freakoffs or FOs. Diddy would eventually hand over the responsibility of organizing the freakoffs to Cassie, and he would just randomly tell her to organize one. Apart from the first one that happened at Diddy's home, other sessions took place in different various hotels and also did not include wearing masquerade masks. Cassie was responsible for contacting the male escorts from various sites including Craigslist, Backpage, and Cowboys for Angels on Diddy's commands, who preferred black males with BBC, while his well-connected staff would handle other logistics like bringing in drugs and baby oil into the hotel suites. Cassie would take multiple drugs including marijuana, ecstasy, coke, and ketamine just to dissociate herself with the acts she was about to perform. These FOs would usually commence with Cassie and the escort rubbing baby oil on each other. Diddy would often stay in the bedroom as Cassie and the escort initiated the whole session in the living space of the suite, and he would only come out later. But before these sessions, Diddy would instruct Cassie to tell the escort not to acknowledge him when he comes in. After coming in, he would take his directing role. He would give Cassie and the escort specific instructions on which pose they should take next and how to take them, as exactly as he wanted. He would instruct Cassie to dress up in lingerie and wear white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black male escorts. He would record these sessions with any device that was close to him: phones, tablets, and laptops. He would even use Cassie's phone to record at times. But whenever they were done, Cassie would delete these videos from her phone, but he still retained more videos on his other devices. He would threaten her with these videos, telling her that he would release them if she ever disobeyed him, which kept Cassie inside his toxic cycle because she never wanted anyone to see those videos, especially her mom, as she claimed it would make her look like a slut. Diddy would also threaten to send the sex tapes to her parents' workplace just to get them fired. These sex tapes were critical to Diddy's control over Cassie. Anytime he sensed she might expose his wrongdoing, he'd use them as a weapon to intimidate her. For instance, during the Cannes Film Festival in France, Diddy got angry and kicked Cassie off the yacht, leaving her stranded with no money and no passport. Thankfully, she managed to reconnect with him. But on the commercial flight back home, when she tried to keep her distance, he swapped seats with one of his staff just to sit beside her. Mid-flight, he pulled out a laptop and started playing the tapes, warning her that he would release them if she ever did anything stupid. But as these FOs became more and more frequent, more problems emerged for Cassie. She started getting gastrointestinal issues, sores in her mouth, and frequent UTIs. But that was no excuse, because Diddy even forced her to engage in these FOs during her periods. Whenever Diddy wanted a freak off, he would do whatever it takes to get it. In August of 2015, Cassie was celebrating with her friends on her 29th birthday party when Diddy insisted that he wanted a freak off and that they should leave for another hotel. At first, Cassie was hesitant, but Diddy got his security to corner her away from her friends, and she eventually left with him after being intimidated. After the freak off, they returned to the suite where the party was, and Diddy was so intoxicated that he began acting so aggressive. He held one of Cassie's friends over the balcony on the 17th floor like a child, which made everyone at the party so scared. Cassie was also intoxicated, and she couldn't intervene but rather just watch her friend being abused. Thankfully, nothing dangerous happened that night. And by the way, you have to keep it in mind that even during these sessions, the beating never stopped. At times, Diddy would get so intoxicated and would beat Cassie in the presence of the male escort. He would immediately give Cassie lavish presents, including designer bags and bracelets, in the middle of the session as a way of silencing her. In some cases, the physical abuse was so much that Diddy had to pay tens of thousands of dollars in damages to the hotel after they left. With time, these freak-offs would start to last longer and longer, ranging between 3 hours and 4 days, and would sometimes include 2 male escorts. These escorts were paid between $1,500 and $6,000 for their services in cash. The extended sessions pushed Cassie deeper into drug use, escalating her anxiety and worsening her physical condition. She'd vomit before some of them, but that didn't stop Diddy. She would become so exhausted after these sessions that she required IV fluids and massages for recovery along with Diddy. Most of these happened over weekends, sometimes dragging into Mondays or Tuesdays, leaving her barely enough time to recover before the next one. These long sessions also got Cassie addicted to opiates, which she would take to calm her down from the other drugs she was taking during the FOs, and also to make her feel numb. And with Diddy demanding her presence for these freak-offs so often, she barely had any time left for music. Her career, which had already slowed, began to flatline, despite her 10-album deal with Bad Boy. Despite having little time for herself, Cassie still showed interest in pursuing her music career. In 2009, she spoke to a music manager at a party in Los Angeles, hoping the connection would help her grow as an artist, and she genuinely believed Diddy would be happy for her. But when he found out she had spoken to someone else about her career, he was furious. He immediately dragged her out of the club, and as they headed home, things turned violent. Inside the car, Diddy began beating her mercilessly. He shoved her into a corner and stomped on her face. The situation became so intense that even his bodyguard had to intervene, but he couldn't stop the assault. When they got to Diddy's house, it only got worse. Cassie tried to escape, but he chased her down, kicked her repeatedly in the face, and left her bleeding. Realizing how badly he had hurt her and how serious the consequences could be, Diddy panicked. He ordered his security team to hide her at the London Hotel in Los Angeles for a week. While she was there, he tried to smooth things over with lavish gifts. During that week, Cassie asked to visit her parents, but Diddy refused. He feared they would see her battered face and report him, which could land him in jail. That moment made something painfully clear. Diddy's inner circle wasn't just enabling him. They were actively covering up his abuse. And it was then Cassie realized she had no one to turn to. But that wasn't the only time she tried to reclaim her career. In 2015, she made another attempt, and this time things got so bad that even Diddy's security almost turned on him. At an after-party in a Las Vegas hotel suite, Diddy caught Cassie speaking with a well-known music manager. He pulled her aside and told her to go into the adjoining bedroom. Once there, he exploded in rage. Cassie ran around the room trying to escape as he beat her, eventually locking herself in the bathroom. But Diddy kicked the door open and continued punching and kicking her while she was curled up on the floor. She screamed for help, but no one heard her over the loud music. By the time his head of security and assistant walked in, it was too late. When they saw Cassie, they immediately started crying. Cassie's face was a mess, 2 black eyes, a bruised and busted lip, and a large welt on her forehead. Still, even after witnessing that level of abuse, they chose to protect their boss. Diddy's head of security simply grabbed some ice and handed it to Cassie to soothe her wounds. In the aftermath, realizing how severe the damage was, Diddy rushed to cover his tracks. He sent Cassie to his Holmby Hills mansion, where she stayed with one of his sons. While she was there, he FaceTimed her and told her to put on makeup because he didn't want his son to see her in that state. At that moment, Cassie understood she wasn't just in an abusive relationship. She was trapped in a system of manipulation, intimidation, and silence. Even though Cassie felt trapped in this toxic cycle, it didn't stop her from trying to escape. In 2011, Diddy connected her with Kid Cudi for a few music projects. And during that time, Cassie ended up having a brief affair with him. Later that year, Diddy took a trip and left Cassie behind to continue working with Cudi. But when he returned, he was shocked by what had happened in his absence. Almost immediately after landing, he told Cassie he wanted a freak off, and she complied. But during the session, Diddy went through her phone and discovered emails between her and Kid Cudi, revealing there was something more than just music going on between them. His mood switched instantly. He became enraged, grabbed a manual corkscrew, wedged it between his fingers, and lunged at her. Cassie managed to escape and called Kid Cudi, who picked her up and hid her in a hotel suite. But Diddy knew exactly where to start from. Before his trip, he had left Cassie in the care of his assistant, Capricorn Clark. He showed up at Capricorn's house with a gun in his hand along with his bodyguard. He allegedly told her, "We're going to kill Kid Cudi," and forced her to drive them to Cudi's residence. Once they arrived, Diddy and the bodyguard entered the house, while Capricorn stayed in the car. From the car, she called Cassie, who was with Kid Cudi at the time, and told them that Diddy and another person were inside Kid Cudi's house. But before she could finish the call, Diddy came back and caught her on the phone, which only escalated his anger, and shortly after they fled the scene. Once Kid Cudi learned Diddy had broken into his home, he rushed to his car and called him on the way. Diddy answered and reportedly told him, "I'm over here waiting for you." But by the time Cudi arrived, Diddy was already gone. He found his security cameras turned in the wrong direction, his family's Christmas presents opened, and his dog locked in the bathroom, trembling and clearly traumatized. Not long after, Diddy sent one of his staff members to reach out to Cassie, telling her that he just wanted to talk. Although she was hesitant due to his recent behavior, Cassie also felt like she had nowhere to hide, so she returned. But when she did, Diddy attacked her again, beating her mercilessly before kicking her in the back as she tried to run for the door. He threatened to kill her and Capricorn if they didn't convince Kid Cudi that Diddy had nothing to do with the break-in. Cassie managed to escape once more, this time fleeing to her parents' home in Connecticut, where her mother took photos of injuries she sustained from Diddy's beatings. But before she got there, she emailed her mother and told her about Diddy's plan to release her explicit videos after discovering her affair. Diddy demanded $20,000, claiming it was reimbursement for money he had spent on her. Fearing for their daughter's safety, Cassie's parents took out a home equity loan and were instructed by Diddy's bookkeeper on how to wire the money. But the payment was later returned because Diddy didn't actually need the money. It was just for blackmail. Maybe he thought they wouldn't be able to raise it, but they did. Now, if you're wondering why Cassie's parents didn't report the abuse their daughter was enduring, this is what Diddy's former security guard had to say.
He would send Cassie's parents on vacations and give them money and everything else like that to try to placate the situation.
Yes, yes.
And they would take it.
Yeah, they would take it. They would take it, and her brother came and I think he gave her brother a job working with her. You know what I'm saying? He would do all the things to calm it down, to satisfy, especially after they had a big blow up or a big fight. And he felt like the mother and father knew about it.
Cassie's relationship with Kid Cudi didn't survive the chaos, but Diddy wasn't done. After she returned to him, he told her he was planning to blow up Kid Cudi's car, and that he wanted to make sure Cudi and his friends were home when it happened. And then, in January 2012, it happened. Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. His dog sitter called him early that morning to tell him the vehicle was on fire. On the way home, one of his friends sent him a picture of his convertible Porsche, its roof blown wide open by a Molotov cocktail. By the time he got there, the car was destroyed beyond repair. Even though Diddy had successfully sabotaged her plan of leaving him, that didn't stop her from giving it another try. Towards the end of 2015, she was in South Africa filming Honey 3 when she began a flirtatious relationship with Michael B. Jordan. They spent some good time together, including New Year's Eve, while she and Diddy were on a brief break. But once Diddy learned about Cassie and MBJ, he immediately called and threatened him. Michael B. Jordan then called Cassie and told her to get in touch with Diddy immediately. Whatever spark had started between them fizzled out quickly, and Cassie ended up returning to Diddy. Diddy's relationship with Cassie was often described as toxic and unpredictable, comparable to the on and off dynamic between Selena Gomez and Justin Bieber. But by 2016, the abuse had escalated to even more dangerous levels. During a freak-off in March of 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Diddy reportedly got so intoxicated that he ended up punching Cassie in the face, giving her a black eye. After the session, he took a nap, and Cassie used that window to try and escape. But Diddy woke up just in time and chased her down the hallway. He caught her at the elevator as she was trying to leave and began beating her again before attempting to drag her back to the room. He grabbed her bag and other belongings and took them back to the suite. Cassie managed to call hotel security, but before they arrived, Diddy returned and assaulted her again, allegedly throwing a glass object at her. Now you might wonder why no one else was in that hallway as all this was happening, and that's because Diddy had rented out the entire floor. Eventually, security personnel arrived and escorted Cassie to retrieve her things from the room before helping her exit the hotel. She got into a cab to return to her apartment, but midway through the ride, she changed her mind. She feared running away would only make things worse. When she returned to the hotel lobby, security stopped her from going back upstairs. They had reviewed the footage and told her to leave. As she left the hotel, Diddy began panicking. Realizing how badly he had messed up, he started sending her a series of texts, saying how he was about to be arrested and how he had 6 kids to care for, and begging her to call him back. But she never responded. He assumed Cassie was going to press charges, and he knew the evidence against him was overwhelming. Diddy went to the hotel's head of security and offered him $100,000 for the footage. He instructed him not to make any big purchases and to delete the footage from the system. But that didn't work, because eventually the public got that footage. When Cassie finally reached her apartment, her friend, who was already there, was so alarmed by her swollen eye that she immediately called 911. When officers arrived, Cassie answered a few questions, but she didn't give Diddy's name. His manipulation had worked. In court, Cassie later said, "In that moment, I didn't want to hurt him. I wasn't ready," even though he had already hurt her so many times. Diddy later showed up at her apartment, banging on the door, but she refused to open it. He even tried to force his way in with a hammer, but eventually left. Despite everything, Cassie traveled to his Los Angeles home shortly after the incident because she had a fitting session scheduled for the premiere of her new movie in just a few days. After the premiere, she left her Comstock apartment and went into hiding at a friend's home in Florida. But Diddy wasn't going to let her disappear that easy. He had James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Management at the time, track her down. Cruz told her that her new single wouldn't be released unless she started answering Diddy's calls. And Diddy didn't stop there. He sent another woman who claimed to be from Sony Music to deliver the same threat. By then, Cassie's music career had already faded, and most people who recognized her only knew her as Diddy's partner, but not instead as an artist. And that shows you how far he was willing to go to control and intimidate her just to keep her within his reach. But at that point, the arguments were more and more frequent, and it had become too much for Cassie. In August of that same year, Cassie's mom was forced to call the cops after yet another heated argument. Cassie and Diddy were in the car when she told him she wanted to break up. Diddy snapped. He grabbed her phone and started scrolling through it, trying to find out what triggered her decision. Then he jumped out of the car with her phone while Cassie, terrified, rode home with the driver. On the way, she called her mom and told her what had happened. Her mother then contacted the police, but by the time they arrived at Cassie's home, Diddy had already returned her phone and fled, and no charges were filed. Just a week later, Diddy threw Cassie a lavish party for her 30th birthday, as if nothing had ever happened. But behind closed doors, their relationship continued to unravel. In the months and years that followed, Cassie made it clear she was exhausted. The freakoffs had become unbearable, and she told Diddy they weren't bringing anything positive to her life anymore. But he refused to listen. So she began plotting her next move, one that Diddy would never see coming. You see, when Diddy started dating Cassie back in 2007, he was still officially linked to Kim Porter. And that's part of the reason they kept their relationship out of the public eye for so long. But this time, Cassie was ready to flip the script. As Diddy's personal trainer became less available, he began hiring new trainers to work with Cassie. One of them was celebrity trainer Alex Fine, who Cassie went on to start a relationship with. And despite earlier failed attempts at breaking away, this time Cassie was smarter, careful enough to keep things hidden. Diddy had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. As her plan unfolded smoothly, she had just one move left, the final step to free herself for good. After months of barely speaking to Diddy, she agreed to meet him for what she called a closure conversation at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, in August 2018. During dinner, Diddy acted kind and playful. He even dropped her off at home afterward. But before they parted ways, he allegedly did the unthinkable. Even though their on and off relationship had finally ended, that incident left Cassie deeply devastated and traumatized. In 2019, she got married to Alex Fine, and together they now have 3 children. But her life has never returned to what it was before meeting Diddy. The drug-fueled lifestyle he introduced to her left her battling addiction, and sometimes even thoughts. In 2023, she recalled a moment when she nearly gave up. She told Alex, who was home with their 2 kids at the time, "You can do this without me. You don't need me," before trying to walk out of the house. Thankfully, Alex stopped her, and soon after took her to a rehab facility. Diddy was solely responsible for Cassie's downward spiral. She spent all of her early adult life with him. By the time she got out, her career was beyond saving, even though admittedly it wasn't built on solid ground to begin with. Many blame Diddy for destroying her career, and rightfully so. But the truth is, Cassie wasn't an exceptionally talented singer. She was brought into the industry by her then-boyfriend Ryan Leslie, who discovered her while she was still modeling in New York. He wrote her breakout hit, Me and You, and her entire debut album. So really, Cassie's career was never deeply rooted. Still, with the kind of resources Bad Boy could have provided, she had a shot at something big. But Diddy took up most of her time, leaving her with little to no space to develop her artistry or build a future. He completely derailed her life. And since everything was handled or paid for by Diddy and his team, when she finally left him, she had no money, yet she had a family to look after. After breaking away, she began demanding $30 million from Diddy in exchange for not publishing a tell-all book about the abuse she endured throughout their decade-long relationship. But Diddy ignored her demands. So, in November 2023, Cassie filed a lawsuit against him. Diddy's representatives quickly dismissed it as a cash grab. But less than 24 hours later, he settled the lawsuit for $20 million, and at the end of the day, Cassie was able to secure the bag. She was planning to tour in Australia and New Zealand in early 2024, but that tour was eventually canceled. Now, Diddy's defense team recently believed she canceled it because she had already gained the $20 million and there was no need to proceed with the tour. But even though that is the case, she deserves it. Because this man held her hostage for so long, spoiling many of her youthful, energetic years, which she could have used to push her career. That lawsuit has been one of my main sources throughout this video, along with court testimonies from people who were once close to him that have finally decided to speak out.